Hey everyone, on this Monday, welcome into Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we tend to cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores or try to sift through all of the propaganda that they're heaping upon you. And oh boy, over the past 48 hours, we've seen a lot of propaganda that we are going to navigate through. A second Trump assassination attempt, part 2. Who was this guy? How deeply was he connected to the deep state? His CIA connections, his Ukrainian connections. We're learning a lot more about this second Trump assassination that we're going to talk about today on the show.
Plus new U.S. Census data, not newest. That's not a word. New U.S. Census data shows that whites are the largest group in poverty. And in fact, that racism is less of a story when it comes to U.S. poverty than you might think. We're going to dive into this data because it is not what the mainstream media tells us about poverty.
We're also going to talk about Taylor Swift because, you know, hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers were anxiously awaiting what in the heck was Taylor Swift going to say. Is she pro-Trump? Is she pro-Kamala Harris? Right after the debate, she posted on Instagram her feelings, and well, it's not quite what she had in mind. We're going to talk about all of that. Plus, Colonel Douglas Macgregor is going to be here because there are some major movements right now on the Russian side of things as they are aligning massive amounts of troops and ships. Is this a massive invasion about to happen to end this war? We will talk to the Colonel about all of that and more. So welcome in on this Monday. Good to see all of you guys. Hope you had a wonderful weekend despite the crazy news.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. You think about July 13th, we had a Trump assassination attempt,
yes,
right
after a debate,
and then a few days later, like the corporate media just totally forgot about it,
right?
Totally gone, and they're like, oh, another Trump. Now they're like, oh,
glad that news cycle ended.
Now another Trump assassination attempt. How quickly will this one be off of the Today Show and off of any of the mainstream news? Probably not. It'll probably be very, very fast.
Right. And I mean, it's a very inconvenient narrative right now, but there's still blaring questions as law enforcement continues to say, how'd that happen? We're not sure how that... Well, he's not the president. I don't know. Should we be better at this? You think?
It would be amazing if it would. Hey, by the way, we should mention we have a brand new place where you guys can connect with us on Freedom Chat. We set up our Redacted Freedom Chat right there. You can use the QR code. It's a great way to stay connected with our show here on Freedom Chat. How many of you are concerned that your privacy is being attacked by the radical left right now? The deep state, including the DOJ, invading individuals' private messages, targeting them based on their political affiliation. That's why I've partnered with the team over at Freedom Chat, a private social messaging app that, like me, believes privacy is a fundamental human right. Freedom Chat offers true end-to-end encryption, built-in screenshot protection to ensure that no one can screenshot your conversations, no storage of messages on their servers, no commercial use of user data. Right now, scan that QR code on your screen, subscribe to the wait list, or just go to freedomchat.com. And you can follow us. We're Redacted News right there on Freedom Chat. So follow us and subscribe to our channel right there. Again, download the app today, subscribe to our channel, and a bunch of great patriots are already using Freedom Chat. So it's great to see the community is already growing over there. So again, go to our channel right now, subscribe, freedomchat.com/redacted. Well, the deep state desperately wants Trump dead or out of the picture, and they're going to keep trying over and over again. Overnight, we learned a lot more about the latest patsy who tried to kill President Trump. Journalist George Eliason has uncovered evidence that shooter Ryan Routh was legally acting as a Ukrainian agent. So the question is, did he file with the DOJ under the FARA Act? That's a good question. And new video has emerged that would-be assassin attempting to recruit American students to sign up to fight for Zelensky in Ukraine. Watch this new video.
Well, the Ukrainians have a right to fight back.
I don't do paper, though.
I don't care if you do paper or not. I'm looking for revolutionaries. Whatever people want to take this whole system down.
Bro, I'm a veteran. Like, do you need me?
What kind of veteran are you?
Bro, I served in Nuketown.
Well, I think it's better to serve and fight in the powers, fucking over the system.
Yeah, it turns out Americans don't want to fight and die in Ukraine. Roger Stone is our guest. He knows a lot about the deep state actors trying to kill President Trump. Roger, you've been saying for the last few weeks they are going to try again. I think people were like saying, no, Roger, you can't be true. They can't be right. You're going to try again. And absolutely that is the case. What was your reaction the moment you heard about this?
Well, obviously shock and then immediate relief that the president was not harmed. But you're right. I mean, first, I look at this from a historical point of view. I wrote a book in 2013 about the assassination of President Kennedy. I concluded and documented the Secret Service's role in standing down. Right now, I'm working on a book on the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, the full story of which has never been told. I will document government misconduct in that case as well. The questions coming out of Butler are more troubling every week. A majority of the president's detail were not Secret Service agents, but Department of Homeland Security agents who had a 2-hour online tutorial on executive protection. Please, they knew there was a gunman with a gun inside the perimeter for 92 minutes, and they never told the president or his detail or evacuated him. Too many questions. And now this, why was there no drone surveillance of the golf course, for example? So I think it's born of desperation. It's born of hysteria. Donald Trump is on his way to winning this election, and they fear justice, not revenge, justice, meaning people being treated equally under the law. There was a lot of treasonous activity during the final days of the Obama administration. I think that they fear being brought to justice.
And you bring up the Secret Service piece of this. I mean, what we've learned overnight from the Secret Service is that, well, there's a lot of shrubbery. You know, it reminded me of the old Monty Python sketch, Shrubbery. Like they can't deal with sloped roofs and shrubbery. And the Secret Service, because he wasn't a sitting president, had a lighter detail around the golf course. Of course, new video has emerged of President Obama, Martha's Vineyard, playing golf. The Secret Service is examining every car that rolls through the golf course. Massive Secret Service detail. But it seems there's a double standard for President Trump.
Well, first of all, we should ship the Secret Service back to the Treasury Department and out of the more politicized Department of Homeland Security, just the way that they denied protection to Robert Kennedy. Now, I like Robert Kennedy. I admire him. I supported President Trump. I'm now delighted that they've joined in what could be the making of a new American majority. But the idea that they would not give him service when he was fully legally qualified, and while the media was whipping up this hate against him, just another example of the irresponsibility and the politicization of the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the Secret Service.
Were you surprised that the legacy media almost basically comes out, labels this guy almost like a lone gunman once again? He's just one guy. There's nothing to see here. And then any of us who start digging into his past, that he's in Ukraine. You don't go to Ukraine. You don't fight in Ukraine, come back and not have some connection to the United States government. They know who you are. If you're going to Ukraine, flying there, trying to shoot Russians, then you are on their watch list. But the corporate media, of course, now he's a lone guy. He's just a one-off guy, just like the guy in Butler, just like Thomas Crooks. He's acting alone.
Yeah. First of all, Mr. Crooks is seen in a still photograph talking on the phone just before the shooting. He's talking to somebody. Who is he talking to? I had a number of tips that a man named Maxwell Yerrick was involved in Butler. I never put it forward as an assertion. I put it forward as a question. He had 2 prior arrests for assaulting Trump supporters outside Trump rallies. But what he has in common with this new shooter is they were both in Ukraine. And it appears they were both in Ukraine at the same time. So I'm digging into that. I'm not making any claim. I'm saying these are legitimate questions that need to be researched.
Interesting. What do you make of Governor DeSantis of Florida saying they're going to do their own investigation?
Well, I'd like to see the governor redeem himself, in all honesty. Ron DeSantis would never have been governor of Florida but for Donald Trump. He was running in single digits, out of money. All 67 Republican county chairman had endorsed his opponent, as had every Republican member of the legislature. It was Donald Trump, through one tweet, one simple tweet, that lifted Ron DeSantis out of obscurity and made him governor. I'd hoped that he wouldn't challenge the president. He's 42 years old. He has plenty of time. And there's plenty of problems here in Florida to deal with: utility rates, rising crime, and so on. But I think the governor has an opportunity to redeem himself here by conducting a complete investigation. I would trust him at this point far more than I would trust some of these deep state actors. Can we ask the Secret Service and the FBI to investigate themselves? I think not.
What lingering questions do you have about this latest assassination attempt?
A little tough for me because I do a 3-hour live radio show on Sundays. So while most of it was going on while I was doing news bulletins, I really haven't had a chance to read enough about it. But I do know that facility very well. I've played golf with the president there. It's hard for me to believe, first of all, as I said earlier, no drone surveillance of the vicinity. I read that the car that he drove was parked there for quite some time. Nobody questioned that. I mean, there are just too many questions. Again, the real question is, who will get to the bottom of this? If it is not the House Republicans, then it will be no one. They have the authority. They have the subpoena authority. They have the power to do it. The question is, will they actually do it? It disappoints me that Corey Mills and Clay Higgins, some of the most qualified people to be on the committee, were not appointed to the committee by the speaker. Corey Mills being a counter sniper himself and a huge, extensive military experience. These are the right people to be investigating this crime, but they didn't get appointed to the committee.
I hate to ask you this question. I mean, you were correct that they were going to try to assassinate President Trump again. Everyone keeps talking about this October surprise. The deep state has tried repeatedly to take him out. What do you think we're looking at here as we head in with 50 days left before the election?
Well, first of all, in all honesty, my conclusion is spiritual. It's built on the Bible, specifically Samuel 1, sections 15 and 16. I think speaks to the time of 2 kings. It's apocryphal. I think it's prophetic. Saul, the illegitimate king, that's Biden. David, the legitimate king. Saul tried to kill David 3 times in the Bible. So I see a lot of parallels here. I heard from more pastors last night than I did politicians. It was amazing. I think that they grow increasingly desperate as the real Kamala Harris is exposed, as people learn that she's not some likable moderate who's going to unify us, but an extreme radical that would defund the police and who would require every taxpayer to pay for the the health care of everybody in the country illegal. I just used a couple examples. I think they will get even more desperate. In all honesty, I would hope that the president would take on a layer of private security, someone to work with the Secret Service, someone who answers not to the government but to Donald Trump himself. It's a necessity at this point. I pray for his safety every night. I say the rosary for his safety and for some others that I'm praying for every single night. I really think his life was spared by God. I think he knows that. That's why he's amazingly calm and serene in the face of all of this. Not unconcerned, but I think very stoic. He understands that once again, this is the price of standing up for America. The people who say, "Oh, Trump's in this for himself. He's just in it for." Well, if he were in it for himself, he'd just walk away. He could live the greatest life in the world, and people wouldn't be trying to shoot him on a golf course. But he won't walk away. It has nothing to do with his ego. He loves the country, and he hates seeing what they're doing to it.
I'll get you out of here on this, Roger. Alex Jones last night saying Trump has got to stop sort of being out there publicly in these ways on a golf course. They're actively trying to kill him. They're coming after him. And it wouldn't be a sign of weakness for him to maybe stay behind more closed doors. What do you make of that? Do you agree with Alex on that point?
I guess I do not. Alex is a good friend of mine. We don't agree on everything, of course. But if you go back to the COVID-19 period in which the pandemic prevented Trump from doing his signature rallies, he immediately began dropping in the polls. As soon as the restrictions were off and he went back on the road to his signature rallies, he began to rise in the polls. The reason for that is that although the national media doesn't afford the kind of coverage to his rallies that I think they deserve, local and state media does. So when he goes to Pennsylvania, he dominates the free media in Pennsylvania. When he goes to North Carolina, when he goes to Wisconsin. So I think it's his signature move. There's no other political figure in America who could do this. I worked for Ronald Reagan. I loved Ronald Reagan. He was a great, great president, but he could not gather 45,000 people to a rally on the New Jersey shore, for example. So I think there has to be some happy medium. I was happy to see this bulletproof glass they put around him. But then, as you saw, when a woman in the crowd fainted, he came out behind the glass to make sure she was okay. By the way, that's the Donald Trump I know and love. And when he raised his fist in Butler, he didn't know if there was still an active shooter. He had no way of knowing. That was an act of courage. That was a way of him showing people that he wasn't hurt, so they would have hope and keep the faith. I think that was an extraordinarily courageous act.
Well, I think it all comes down to the Secret Service, and I agree with you from your earlier statements. I mean, how sitting president, not a sitting president of the United States, but just a few weeks after he's nearly killed, you don't have a larger detail now with him. It's unbelievable to me. I said I was going to get you out of here a second ago. Were you surprised at the response from President Biden and Kamala Harris on this? Their comments were, "We're glad he's safe." Anything else on their comments?
Yeah, let's be very candid. All of this is the result of the hatred that they and their allies have whipped up in the country. When Congressman Dan Goldman says Trump must be eliminated, and by the way, they're thinking about having him sit on the committee investigating the events in Butler, which is outrageous. Or when Chris Matthews says Donald Trump will have reporters put up against a wall and shot. No, Chris, no, he won't. That's crazy. By the way, Chris, you sat next to me at the Bethesda at the Sea Church when Donald married Melania. You thought he was great then, but you don't like him so much now. Those in the Democrat Party with their extreme rhetoric, he's Hitler, he's going to be a dictator from day one, he's going to suspend the Constitution, he's going to outlaw birth control, he's going to outlaw, these are all lies. They're lies. But they are contributing to this atmosphere of hate in which you can see some deranged person or someone who's politically motivated try to kill him. So somebody has to say they need to temper down the rhetoric. They need to bring down the temperature. I don't think they're going to do that because I don't think they believe they can beat Donald Trump without smearing him, without creating this caricature of him.
I agree. Well, we got 50 days left or so. Might see some more craziness, and we hope and pray for the president's safety as this sort of madness continues. Roger Stone, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us on this crazy news cycle on this Monday. Thanks, Roger.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's great to see you again.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it. Great. I haven't seen Roger in a number of years. I think the last time that I even talked to Roger was Tucker and I were interviewing him on our old show, Fox and Friends. So it's been a number of years. So anyway, love to have a bunch of different voices here on the show, and love to hear from someone who knows Trump, deeply and intimately, and of course, someone who's of course been on the golf course and understands what is going on here. Remember, a few weeks ago, he had said that really the assassination plan was Plan C. Plan A to try to get him to stop, try to throw him out of the election, do whatever you can through indictment. Plan C is assassination. So they've tried it twice. Yeah. What does October bring for this? It's absolutely terrifying.
Considering the fact that this increasingly looks like this person had some help, and so did the previous person. The thing that haunts me that I can't get over is, if that's the plan for him, what's the plan for the rest of us who dissent, the rest of us who don't want these people who are currently in power. And so that's the thing that we all should get upset about, not how much we care personally about Trump, although I find this very haunting. So it does very much feel like an attack on the rest of us and our freedoms, no matter what we think about Trump.
I think the media in general, is deluding themselves as to how much we follow their narrative.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. The case. Yeah. Yeah. And we see that sort of breaking down more and more every day.
Yeah, it's deeply disturbing. But I'm curious how quickly the media will. I saw someone saying they're going to try to spin this into a conspiracy theory. Like, no, just as the facts emerge, it instantly you become aware how in the world, when this was a snap decision by the Trump team to play a round of golf that wasn't on the schedule. So this guy was camped out after midnight. He was there for 12 hours in the shrubbery and waiting. Yeah. So who tipped him off that there was going to be golf? There was no golf plan at all. This was so you're there, you have some sort of inside scoop on this. Right. How are you allowed to have all of this criminal behavior, be able to, a weapon of mass destruction he was caught with before, in Ukraine and back? As I tweeted yesterday, according to my sources, no one's there on the front lines in Ukraine fighting Russians that the CIA doesn't know about. The CIA is controlling everything in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. He's there in Ukraine recruiting people, and the CIA doesn't know who he is. Right. Give me a freaking break. You'd have to be mentally slow to not believe that. To believe that. It's ridiculous.
Although we'll leave you with this one positive take on it. As we were discussing the news last night in our house, our middle daughter said, he's like Harry Potter. He's the boy who lived. Because he continues to be this attempts to assassinate him that are not working. Yeah. So let's, pray for the safety of everybody at this point. And we are collectively knocking on wood.
We got a big story to come up on the census. New census data is revealing something pretty shocking, and we'll see how the mainstream media, we'll see if the liberal media actually covers this story or not. We're not going to reveal it just yet, but we'll tell you what's hidden in this census data. It's pretty eye-opening, and it could explain why this election is. We're watching, of course, an economic disaster unfolding before us right now for the U.S. dollar and inflation, and of course, rate cuts are coming in about 2 days here. Interest rate cuts. So what is this going to mean for the American family? But this new census data is pretty shocking, so we'll talk about that.
Plus, the Taylor Swift effect may not be the effect that she intended. We're going to talk about her politics. Yes, we are. And yes, you are going to stick around. Some people in our that work on Redacted are like, oh, Taylor Swift. Well, we're going to at least talk about the Taylor Swift effect.
We're not going to play any of her music. Just
we are not going to do that.
Any of the music.
We're not. No. So
but it's going to be an interesting discussion about this, because I think these celebrities get in their head that they're so important, right?
Yes.
They've got their hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers, and they tweet out or they post it, here's how I feel about Kamala, and they're expecting a result, and it's surprising. So we'll talk about that. But first, we're going to tell you about our friends over at TWC, the wellness company, because they have an emergency kit that you should look into to see if it fits you and your family. Now, of course, the world is more unpredictable by the day. We have the bird flu summit coming up in October. We told you about that. What does that tell us? It tells us that the global world is uncertain. What we think we have access to is not a done deal. It's not a certainty. You don't have to be scared, though, if you are prepared. That's where the wellness company comes in. They make the medical emergency kit, and every home in America should consider having one, because they are packed with life-saving medications that maybe you can access today, but what happens if you cannot access it tomorrow because of politics? A Z-Pack, amoxicillin, things like that. All of it is backed by experts like Dr. Peter McCullough. So imagine this: no more frantic searches for a doctor, no more emergency waiting rooms, just a few clicks and the kit is delivered to your door. It is a luxury. It's not just a luxury, it's a necessity. So protect your family by heading on over to twc.health/redacted. Use our promo code redacted and you can save $30 at checkout. And then you have this. You don't know when you're going to need it, but it gives you peace of mind. So don't wait until it's too late. Act now, take control. Go to twc.health/redacted. You can save $30 at checkout with promo code redacted. Thank you to all your super chats. And by the way, if you do subscribe to the channel while we're live, your name will pop up here on the big screen. People were asking earlier, hey, where's the debt clock that you guys had up here? Because the national debt at $35 trillion. We start off the show. I think it shows at the very beginning of the show, and then it disappears as we start the show. We don't want to keep it up there the whole time during the show. So I think that's the case, right, Philip? It starts here, and then we don't want to make you super depressed staring at that $35 trillion the whole time.
Yeah, usually up there for the showrunner.
For the showrunner, for people who don't know what a showrunner is, just kind of the start of the show when we're telling you what stories are coming up. It's up there. So
be punctual to the show, and you'll see it every day or watch the replay. But yes, that is something that it kind of contributes to every story we tell, because we cover geopolitics on this show. Everything seems like government lies and waste lead to war, which increases the national debt, which tanks our economy. It's all circular, It all relates.
Yeah, all the money we spend, the $1 trillion in the military-industrial complex. Yeah, it's all circular. All right.
Okay. Did you know that white people are the biggest poverty group inside the United States? Well, that's not something the media tells us. Why don't we hear much about it? If the largest group in poverty is white people, why does the media not seem to care about white people? Why do you think that is? I'm not going to give you an answer, but I'm asking for your commentary. So put it in the chat or the comments below. Just why? So let's look at the data. This comes from the new poverty report from the U.S. Census, came out just a few days ago. Here's the report. You should, in fact, seek it out for yourself and read it. It does show that whites are the largest poverty group in the U.S., but it excuses that because of representation. Liberals love representation, even in groups of misery and suffering. They want equal representation. Now, there is a huge group of whites in poverty, but they say it's not that big of a deal because there are so many whites as it is. That's why that's less sensitive data. It's actually a really insensitive way to frame data. So let's take a look for ourselves. The data does show that 40.5% of people in poverty are whites, but they don't seem to care so much because whites make up 58% of the population. So in other words, they are underrepresented. The population shows that Hispanics make up 29% and blacks 21%. So why does the conversation around poverty so often revolve around black people? Why does it leave out white people, and why do they have so few programs to alleviate white poverty when clearly that is the greatest need? they basically boil it down to concentration. So the reason that the census downplays white poverty is because they say other groups have more poverty representation. So it shows that blacks make up 13% of the population, but 20% of those in poverty, which they say is racism because they are overrepresented, without getting to the cause of that poverty. So how they explain it is the composition. They say that this shows the composition of total population by race and Hispanic origin, and that figure highlights which groups are overrepresented or underrepresented. So they don't really much care about people in poverty. They care about skin care and who they represent, as if there should be more whites in poverty because there are more whites in the population. And if you're white and poor, I guess that's okay. You can actually have a few more white and poor people, and then we would feel better about that, I guess. But if we're really concerned about representation, let's take a look at this chart again. Why are so many Asians in poverty? If there's 6.6% of Asians in the United States and they represent 5.4%, that's on parity. That's not really the story. We hear about the model minority. Also, again, what is an acceptable number of people in poverty by race? Do we really want any group to be equal representation in a poverty class? I would say that's the wrong goal, don't you think? If you want to care about poverty, you kind of have to care about everybody, don't you? Unless there's something that indicates that these disparities are due to racism, which the data does not show. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. Now, black poverty has gone up under the Biden-Harris administration. That's probably one of the many reasons that they are bleeding black voters, because black voters are not stupid and they understand that they are worse off than they were under the previous administration. But so has Asian poverty, which the media does not discuss. In fact, the column here on the left is 2022 numbers and the column on the right is 2023. So white poverty did go down by 0.7%, while black poverty and Asian poverty has gone up. Why? If that is an increasing number, why aren't there programs focused on Asian poverty? Why? Why don't we hear that? Because Asians aren't a target of the victim mentality?
No, I mean,
that's my guess.
They're white adjacent, right? That's the thing. They're white adjacent, as Vivek Ramaswamy points out. So they just get lumped in with whites, and who cares?
And we don't care about them at all. Now, back to why I say that even though we see differences in race representation and poverty, this doesn't necessarily mean that that is because of systemic racism. Here is why. Because the data shows that the biggest predictors of poverty are behaviors and not skin color. Now, I know this probably looks like crap if you're watching this on a phone, so you should read this for yourself. But what I wanted to highlight here is that there are certain behaviors that predict poverty or lack of poverty, and what they are marriage, education, and experience. So what I've circled here shows that behaviors matter more than skin color when it comes to poverty. So first off, marriage. Interesting, married people have the lowest poverty rate by quite a lot. And what I think is so interesting is that cohabitation does not give you that same advantage. So if you live together but are not married, you still are at risk at poverty. I'm not exactly sure why. I'm sure there are demographers who could explain that. I welcome your comments on this, but that's very interesting.
You're less likely to join your finances if you're just cohabiting. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of times being married is like being in business together, whether you like that or not. It's not very romantic. But if you are kind of in it together to build wealth, that makes a difference. And in fact, Black people follow the same trajectory. Did you know that economist Thomas Sowell says, or Sowell, I think is how you say it, and we get in arguments about this in our group chat, says that this has been true since the 1990s at least, that the poverty rate for married Black families has been less than 10% since 1994. Did you know that? So Black people are just not at risk for poverty. Their other demographics matter, whether or not they have work experience, education, and a family actually predicts them being out of poverty like every other group. And in fact, white single parent households have a much higher poverty rate than married Black families. Did you know that? That's true. That's not a statistic often discussed. Now, the two other behaviors that lower the chance of poverty are education and work experience. So clearly, as Thomas Sowell says, some behaviors pay off more so in the absence of racism.
Right. I mean, here's the thing, right? If you consistently go to work, you consistently show up.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you come from a background that's more difficult, you didn't have the advantages of another individual. But of course, if you're showing up, the behavior is that you get up every morning,
right,
and then you go to work. You're going to climb up that managerial ladder, and
you commit to a family. And you stick with it and you build wealth. These are the things that lead people out of poverty. So no like racist program or anti-racist program.
Oh, you mean the government isn't your answer? You mean Kamala Harris isn't your answer to getting out of poverty? Government can't help you get out of poverty?
In fact, no, that's not the case. And neither do these anti-racist economic programs do very much. And yet we are sold these sort of racial fallacies, racist aid programs we see. For example, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund during the pandemic opened up initially to only give money to restaurant owners who were either veterans, women, or economically disadvantaged individuals, by which they meant people of color. This was neo-racism at its finest. And in fact, white men, some of whom had been in poverty their whole lives, as the data clearly shows, were just left out. Those groups of men sued, and by the time their judgment came, they won their case. But by that time, a lot of the money had already been given out. And when they actually won their case, women and people of color who'd been promised money then didn't get it because white men had to then now jump the line that they had been held in. That was a mess. If they had not done that and only handed out money by economic need, we wouldn't have this neo-racist mess. Also, the American Rescue Plan during the pandemic offered COVID relief to black farmers first because they say they'd been disadvantaged for years. In fact, the data doesn't support that. Black people did not need the government to pull them out of poverty. They did it themselves.
Oh, only black farmers are hurting.
Yeah, no, actually, black people pulled themselves out of poverty because guess what? They're a super capable group. They're not idiots like the government likes to make them out. Did you know that the black poverty rate fell from 87% to 47% from 1940 to 1960 before civil rights programs because they follow the trajectory of any other group in color?
Wait a minute,
Italians, Poles, Jews.
Wait a minute, Democrats didn't save them?
No.
Democrats and the Great Society? They fucking saved themselves.
I'm sorry to tell you this.
Lyndon Johnson didn't save them and with the Great Society?
They can do it themselves.
Oh.
Yes.
Shocking.
I'm sorry to tell you that, but the data doesn't show that they need the government to help them. So when the government tried to give only black farmers money, white farmers sued because many of them were also disadvantaged groups. Many of them were facing foreclosure, and they won because they'd been a discriminated group. Had the government then truly assessed needs during these aid programs, no one would have had these kind of problems. So
Bodie Master says facts are awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right.
In our Rumble chat.
But
facts
also I think that it makes it like if you go around thinking, wow, poor black people, we really need to do more for them. They really can't do anything for themselves. That's an awful way to go around the world. And I used to sort of bite on that Democratic line and feel sorry for people and I feel like such an ignorant person, you know. Yeah,
they can't even get IDs, according to them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, voting is racist. Like to get an ID to go to the voting poll, like that's racist against black people. Black people can't possibly figure out how to get an ID.
That's such a racist way to feel. They're selling us racism through the guise of racism, right? And so, again, I think the best way to take this is you have to care about poverty across the board, not by skin color.
Chris H says you guys are misreporting this black farmers issue. Redacted. Chris H. Okay, Chris, can you explain that? We'll circle back to your point here, Chris.
Yeah,
I'll keep an eye on Chris's comment here. How are we misrepresenting?
Also, that bit was reported by Coleman Hughes, who is a black journalist as well. So anyhow, neo-racists will say, well, this is an evening of the score. It evens it out because blacks have suffered more than whites, so it's time to turn the tables. Although that sort of, well, that's not the history of slavery, because whites have been in slavery for a long time too, actually. If we're going to just cut off the certain year that we're researching the history of slavery, okay, but we shouldn't do that. We should look back through the history of humanity. And again, we're talking about the aggregate, and people don't live in the aggregate. The poorest people in the U.S. live in all white, poor, Southern hillbilly communities, for lack of a better term. They hardly have the chance to be racist because there are so few blacks in their communities. So better to care about poverty for everyone than just poverty by race. Am I right or am I right? Let me know what you think about the reasons that this is framed differently than the statistics tell us, and why they don't want to have this real conversation. So let me know what you think.
Fonzo C says this segment is going left. It's exact opposite of going left. I don't know how that would go left. This is the Democrats literally want you to believe this trope so that you'll vote for them, and of course, they can continue to throw money at these issues.
Yeah.
Instead
going
of actually
left would be confirming what they're saying.
Right. Well, I don't see Chris responding here, but
okay.
I'll circle back.
Well, just let me know. I don't have any politics here. I'm just looking at what the data shows us, and I would like to care about all groups equally. That's what I want, instead of sell you a racist story or a neo-racist ball of wax that only helps certain groups and then frames other groups. We're talking about poor whites, right? What power do they have? What power are they exerting? I would like to care about people across the board
on merit.
in a colorblind way.
Yeah, exactly, in a colorblind way. But anyway, we'll circle back on that. All right, we got more news to get to here. Keep the show rolling along. All right, we're going to talk about the Taylor Swift effect because the hundreds of everyone's waiting. All the liberals were waiting. Kamala Harris and everyone was waiting. How is she going to marshal her hundreds of thousands of, or millions, I guess, of Instagram followers?
I think it's 300 million, something to that effect.
Yeah. And how is she going to reach out to these individuals, and who is she going to support in this election? She also set up a special link so you could vote right through her special link and the whole thing. Is it the effect that she was hoping for? Is it the effect that the Biden administration, the Harris administration had been hoping for? We'll talk about that. Also, Colonel Douglas Macgregor is going to join us because there are some big movements on the Russian side as we speak. Massive troop movements. Could this be a precursor to the massive invasion to end this war in Ukraine? We're going to talk to the Colonel about that in just moments. We are going to do that. And thank you for all of your kind super chats. We have a bunch of new members and a lot of longtime members I just want to shout out here. Derek Morris, thank you so much. He's been a member for 35 months.
I know that name. Thank you for being here.
Almost a 3-year member. Clayton's chat. Much love, guys. Much love, Clayton, Natalie, and the team. Love the show. Still tune in regularly. Thanks, Derek's. Thank you so much for that. Lawman Land gifted 1 Redacted membership. Thank you for gifting a Redacted membership to an audience member. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to all the Redacted rebels out there. All right.
And thanks for noticing that I got my hair cut today. My husband didn't notice.
I know. I knew you got it cut because you disappeared for 2 hours.
It was 1 hour.
I know.
Yeah, but I appreciate the girl talk, and thank you for the compliments on that. All right, because we are going to have more girl talk. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift. I think that hers is the kind of opinion you can only have if you don't have kids, because she has nobody to sacrifice. Nobody that she loves will be drafted into the war. Her cats can't be drafted. So that's where I think this ignorance comes from.
Keep your cats out of Springfield, Ohio.
Right. Okay. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, we want to talk about American financing, because we want to let you know that they can help you, because the Biden-Harris economy has been such a burden on the average American. We just talked about that in the previous segment about poverty. Wages are flat. Expenses are up. It's very hard to manage all the bills without grabbing for credit cards. So if you're a homeowner and you're frustrated with this cycle, then maybe you can take 10 minutes and call American Financing and see if this is something that you can start to research and learn for yourself. Because as interest rates come down, hopefully this week, you hear that? That's me knocking on wood. If you're constantly carrying a credit card balance, then maybe you can switch out bad credit for good, bad financial debt for good. That's what they can teach you. They have salary-based mortgage consultants that are saving their customers an average of $800 per month, plus delaying mortgage payments, which could help out a lot if things are tight. So call them at 866-899 890-8434 or visit americanfinancing.net/redacted today. That's americanfinancing.net/redacted.
Chris H. I'm just going to give a shout out because I was conversing here with Chris about this whole black farmers issue. And he says, I hate Redacted. I don't have the research on hand. I know Phillips Scott of African Diaspora News reported a drastically different view on this black farmers issue. And I'd also suggest consulting Riza Islam. We will. So we are always open to facts and data. Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Let's dive into it.
Shall we? Taylor Swift time. Well, it turns out Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris may have backfired. According to recent polls, here's how The Guardian puts it. Taylor Swift's endorsement backfires on Kamala Harris. It comes from a YouGov poll. While it originally showed that people thought her endorsement would help in the immediate aftermath, a follow-up poll posted over the weekend shows most people just do not want her opinions at all. So the follow-up shows that they don't want her politics. Now, the poll first asked how many of them were Taylor Swift fans, and 66% of them said they are not, which is interesting. Why is she so popular if 66% of respondents don't like her? I guess it's because her really avid remaining population, two of which are my daughters. Now, incidentally, that matches up with the 66% that said her endorsement makes no difference at all. See answer 31. Now, the poll finds that 8% of voters said that the superstar's approval would make them somewhat or much more likely to vote for Miss Harris. 8%. A win does not make, but more of them would be less likely to vote for her because of the Taylor Swift endorsement. So fully 20% say that if Taylor Swift likes Kamala Harris, they won't vote for her. Now, why do you think that is? Could it be because she endorsed Joe Biden and look where it got us? Could it be because she campaigned against Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee in 2018 and that backfired? In fact, Marsha Blackburn won. Could it be she is not a relatable person who has private jets and takes no responsibility for her actions?
Right. Lectures other people about climate change, but also flies around in private jets.
Right. Could it be because she has catchy music, but is otherwise not a likable person? Well, this weekend, President Trump posted this: I hate Taylor Swift. Democrats said that this is childish, and sure, it's childish. I mean, you can like or not like whoever you want. I mean, I found her endorsement immature, so that's what we're doing is childishness. But I want to say I actually have more of a cause to hate her because my daughters subject me to her ad nauseum. I took them to her concert and had 44 songs I had to sit through. You guys, 44 songs about her heartbreak that just happened to be of no fault of her own. She's always the sincere and loving person in the story that she tells, and other people burn her and she doesn't deserve it. She bears no responsibility in her relationship. I'm always trying to point this out to my girls, but they love her in the same way I loved Paula Abdul, and I don't want to ruin that for them. Although I will say they know how salty I get a little bit around Taylor Swift lately because of this, and so they're trying to transition over to Sabrina Carpenter. Are there politics that I need to know about that singer? Let me know off. Don't judge me though, because my daughters like Taylor Swift. I've suffered enough. Now, I think this would have been a bigger story if President Trump hadn't had a second assassination attempt on his life, also by a Swiftie. Apparently, the shooter, Ryan Routh, said, fellow Swifties, we have to vote out Donald Trump. He was a Biden-Harris supporter because of Taylor Swift. Okay. If you watch Taylor Swift's Netflix documentary, again, I'm not telling you to do these things. I've had to do these things. You see that her team and her management really tries to discourage her from speaking out about Donald Trump in 2018, and she does it anyway. She whines about using her voice. I have to use my voice. I have to be an ally. You know the trope about how white women love being allies to marginal communities. Yes. Again, I think because she's not a mom, then this ally thing is very important to her. I say let her, she built this platform, let her say what she wants. It's a free country. But she said, I did my research, which sort of made me think like, oh, really? You did your research and you came up with Kamala Harris to vote for? I mean, I don't think her research included anything about the war in Ukraine or Gaza because, again, she has no kids to contribute to a war or to a draft, unless she likes war. Maybe she does. I don't think she has been subject to censorship. Her boyfriend Travis Kelce is on the Pfizer COVID vaccine commercials. I don't think she's done her research about the clinical trials that Pfizer did not do on their most recent vaccine, which only included animal trials and no humans. So, okay, I don't know how much stock you want to put into her research. That's what I'm saying. If you think that Taylor Swift should do the research for you, then why would you be this far into a Redacted segment? That wouldn't make any sense. Right. The kind of people who are watching this right now are not relying on Taylor Swift to do their research. So I'm going to end on this because this meme popped up and it made me laugh for lack of crying because, again, she's not at risk of being sent to war. The meme says, me and the boys getting drafted for World War III because Taylor Swift told a bunch of women to vote for Kamala. So, again, it's a good thing she's a childless cat lady because the cats cannot be drafted as of now. So let me know what you think.
There's still time. Well, maybe Springfield, Ohio.
I don't know if you saw all over Twitter after she did that endorsement, people were posting that 10,000 people per minute were registering to vote Democrat. Which,
wow.
That's
okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I pointed out earlier, she had a link to a vote link that was tied directly to her so that they could track how many people were signing up to vote. And so, I mean, who knows? It's the get out the youth vote. We'll see. I mean, how much of a marker this actually is. The problem with young people in America is that they sign up to vote, but they don't vote. So they're sitting there on their phone playing around on Instagram. And they're like, oh, Taylor just told me to vote.
And then they have
to
figure out when and where to go. And that's where they stop.
It's a Tuesday after work. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. But look, let's be honest. Young people in America really do not vote. That's been the hardest one to sway people to get them to vote.
And I wish that Trump wouldn't say, he just did the coalition with RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. He's trying to bring people together. And that's not a way to do it, saying that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it comes off as petulant.
Especially because it was 2-3 weeks ago where he shared the AI images of Taylor Swift supporting Trump. To me, it's like he should not have done that because not that it's going to anger the Swifties, but now it looks weird to me.
Well, and we're also sitting here, not us, but a lot of people are saying all the negative and hate rhetoric that the liberals have been foisting at Donald Trump. Is that a reason why this guy grabbed a gun and went and tried to go shoot him the other day? Can we tamp down the hate rhetoric? Great,
right,
you don't like her music, great.
He has said that in another administration he wouldn't be so prolific on the mean tweets. Well, okay, this is a campaign promise unfulfilled. And it doesn't do anything other than sort of make some people chuckle and make some people turned off. So anyhow, let us know what you think. And I do not want to hear you judge me for having daughters who like Taylor Swift. I don't accept those comments. I'm doing what I can, you guys. I'm not perfect.
All right. Well, we got more news to get to here. And Colonel Douglas McGregor is going to join us in moments as Russia is amping up major troop movements and battleships right now. Is this a precursor to an invasion of sizable proportions to end the war in Ukraine? We're going to look at that. We're also going to look at whether the Biden administration is going to pull off the governor and allow Ukraine long-range weapon attacks inside of Russia. Team Biden seems like they kind of hedged on that. They're kind of pulling back. The UK is actively pressuring them in that regard. So we'll talk about that with the Colonel here in just a few moments. So he will be here. All right. But first, if you suffer from daily pain, I need you to listen to this message very carefully. What we know about pain relief is changing forever. As we age, aches and pains are normal, and we're all searching for effective ways to relieve pain without side effects and addiction. Let's be frank. We've all seen the horrors of the opioid crisis in the United States. You may have been affected personally. I mean, let me know in the chat how many people you know in your family or extended family have been affected by the opioid crisis. That's where a pioneering medical scientist comes in, Clint Winters. You may have seen this world-renowned health expert featured in the national media. He's unveiled a natural pain reliever. It's taken the world by storm. Yes, I'm talking about Canoladine, the 100% drug-free way to get full-body pain relief without dangerous pills. As you read this, Canoladine has become the go-to pain reliever for over 1 million Americans right now. Hundreds of professional athletes. It's now the official pain reliever of the UFC. So right now you get a chance to try it for yourself. Go to trykano.com/redacted and for a limited time offer, try it for less than $1 a day. The 100% drug-free canoladine. Try it right now. Go to trykano.com/redacted. Try it right now and you'll see for yourself. Well, a lot of moving pieces in the global chess match right now. Russia warning today that Ukraine is about to launch a massive false flag operation where they would strike children's hospitals using Russian weapons in order to rally support from the West. Is their support from the West fading and they need some sort of large false flag operation to wake Biden up? I don't know. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin doubled down on his warning to the West. If the U.S. allowed and supported long-range strikes inside of Russia, it would mean NATO is at war with Russia. And according to the New York Times, the U.S. is scared of escalating a hot war with Russia. Do you buy that? It's really the Brits that are trying to make this move? Well, let's ask Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who is in the new studio, and I'm thrilled to have the Colonel here to talk about all of this and more. Colonel, great to see you today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Clayton. Good to be with you.
So a couple of moving pieces I want to get your take on. We have this Houthi strike inside of Tel Aviv using a hypersonic missile. We have Zelensky fanboy just trying to assassinate Donald Trump. The timing of all of this is very suspect. First, before we get into a couple of these other big stories, I want to get your take on this latest assassination attempt and the fact that we now know that this individual was in Ukraine. He was there trying to recruit Americans to go fight against Russia. And the timing of him suddenly showing up at this particular hole on this golf course, when the Secret Service, we now know today, this was a snap decision for Trump to even play golf, that he happened to show up at that exact moment. Well, just give me your initial reaction to that from your close relationship with President Trump.
Well, one has to conclude that there are very few accidents of this kind. I mean, that's too much of a coincidence to dismiss out of hand. I don't know is the basic answer to your question, because I don't have access to what the Secret Service and FBI know. We already have lots of unanswered questions about the first attempt. You know, as I was talking to someone very recently, they said, well, he was almost killed. And I said, are you sure? And they said, well, look, it just grazed one side of his head. I said, well, if a professional assassin was at work and could shoot that well, there would have been a second bullet almost immediately that would have gone right through his forehead. And no such a second bullet ever occurred. Instead, what we have is this wild shooting spree into the crowd, which made no sense whatsoever. Now we have this man who seemingly comes out of nowhere, but has, some connectivity to the Ukraine operation, which means connectivity to the CIA, because the CIA has a major hand in running the war in Ukraine. They're the ones spinning the narrative, lying to everybody that the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal all repeat without question. So the whole thing stinks, I think, is the only answer I can come up with. It smells bad. It doesn't make any sense.
The timing is so fascinating to me as well, right at a moment where you have, according to the New York Times, the sort of waffling by the Biden administration on sending or allowing the use of long-range weapons to attack inside of Russia. The UK appears to be the bullies here, the strong arm, but the Biden administration not willing to escalate. And then you have this Ukrainian connection on an attack on President Trump, and now this news of a large-scale false flag operation from the Russian side that's about to happen against children's hospitals in order to rally support from the West. Again, the timing on all of this stinks. What do you make of that?
Well, we have examples of where the Ukrainians had done things and then blamed it on the Russians in the hope that this would build support for Ukraine. You had this early on in what was deemed as a mass atrocity against Ukrainians, where the Russians supposedly went into a town and killed everybody and left the bodies lying around. We now have testimony from the French journalists who have investigated it and have eyewitness accounts that there were no Russians there at all. And the people in this town were Ukrainians who were killed by other Ukrainians in order to create the impression that the Russians were indiscriminately killing civilians. And of course, that fits with the CIA MI6 narrative that you continue to read in all the Western media. So I think the false flag issue should not be dismissed. It's eminently possible. But I would argue that the much more important message is the one that you referred to, that Putin has now delivered. And it's a very straightforward one. He says, clearly the Ukrainians do not have the capability to launch any of these long-range strike systems like the Shadow, or in France it's called the Storm Shadow. In France they call it the Scalp missile. They can't launch these things at any given targets because they depend entirely on our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets in space. We are providing them with the data. We are providing them with the launch capability. And then they get undoubtedly technical assistance, just as right now in Iran, there are thousands of Russians on the ground in Iran helping the Iranians to build up an air and missile defense system. You have the same thing going on with us in Ukraine. And so Putin has said, look, if this happens, we know who's responsible. It's not the Ukrainians. And we're going to take action. Now, I think he's aiming first and foremost, because the Storm Shadow is a British weapon, at the British. Now, what is he going to do? What will the Russians do? They're saying conceivably it could lead to a state of war because they're tired of the nonsense. In other words, they're saying, we're going to treat you as a co-belligerent. Well, that's possible, but that would be out of character for him to strike targets in England at this point, even though they could do it. I think instead they'll probably pick targets where the British are concentrated, much like the Poltava strike. The Poltava strike killed upwards of 740 people. There were large numbers of Swedish, Polish, we think British and American officers, non-commissioned officers training Ukrainians there. So the Russians know where everything is. And that was a case of a couple of Iskander missiles that have a range of about 250 to 300 miles with a 1,500-pound warhead. Now, I don't know with great certainty what will happen, but we know the Storm Shadow, for instance, has a range of about 155 miles. And what they try to do with it is launch it from an aircraft. It flies very low and it is subsonic, which means that it does not fly faster than the speed of sound. Anything that does not fly faster than the speed of sound can be targeted fairly easily if you pick it up as it flies nap of the earth, as we call it. So I think the Russians can probably shoot these things down. They'll be looking for them. But still, it's a hit or miss proposition. And I think they'll look for targets where there's evidence for the presence of U.S. and NATO forces, and they'll hit those. But this does not exclude the possibility that if missiles are launched or aircraft are launched from Poland or Romania or Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, that they will not strike targets in those countries. That is a very real possibility. Now, that in connection with that, we have to go back now to your earlier question about NATO and what are people going to think and how are they going to react. And I think Washington very definitely does not want to escalate this war to the level of a state versus state confrontation. In other words, the United States and its allies versus Russia. Very clearly, I don't think we want that. What do we want? I think we want to keep the war going, sadly. I think that's the real goal in Washington. Let this grinding tragedy play out right up through and beyond the election and leave this mess in the lap of Donald Trump, for instance, or leave it for solution after the election when the attitude will be, well, now we can get out, or now we can end it, or now we can do something else because the election's over. This is the tragedy of American electoral politics. We've been through this so many times in our history. It's awful. You can remember 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. We went through the same sort of thing with Nixon. Well, I think that's what's happening right now inside the administration. So I think the allegation that we don't want to escalate is accurate. On the other hand, you have this man, Starmer, who is at war with his own population. He's locking people up who are opposed to the massive influx of foreigners into Britain. He's punishing his own people. At the same time, he is a strident advocate for war with Russia. No question about it. He doesn't seem to understand how vulnerable Britain and NATO is to Russian weapons and capabilities. So I would think that he's capable of dragging us into something that we ultimately don't want, which is an open war between the United States and Russia. You know, the Russians have put to sea in the Black Sea a number of ships. The ships collectively, at least as of 48 hours ago, carry a minimum of 48 missiles, Iskander-type missiles that can fly 300 miles and hypersonic and so forth. But there are other vessels out there, submarines and so forth. There's a lot of evidence that there's a buildup for a major Russian ground offensive as well as more missile offensives that we've seen in recent days. It's very important that people note that. We're on the threshold of something really big coming out of Russia in Ukraine. I think the Russians have finally decided they've let this war drag on too long. And I think they've decided they've wasted time waiting for someone with common sense to negotiate. So I think they're going to set the terms of battle and ultimately the terms of victory. I think that's what we're going to witness now in October, November. At the same time, people need to keep their eyes on Mr. Netanyahu's threat to invade and destroy southern Lebanon, because that could be the trigger for dramatic events in the entire region. That could bring on a major war, not just with Iran, but with other states. Need to watch Egypt. General Sisi is hanging by a thread. He's extremely unpopular with his population, who see him as an Israeli and U.S. puppet. The same thing is true for King Abdullah in Jordan. His entire government resigned 24 hours ago and walked away from him. I don't think that Abdullah or Sisi are going to survive this crisis and conflict. That means that these huge states, 100 million people in Egypt, and then, of course, 11 plus million Palestinians living in Jordan, all of these people are hostile and are ready to attack Israel. We haven't even discussed what could happen in Syria, and we now know that Mr. Erdogan has said publicly, if the Israelis go into Lebanon, that is a red line for him. They're not just going to sit there. They're very concerned about the very high probability that more Arab refugees will be driven into Turkey. And it's going to cost them far more money to house them and care for them than they can afford, because their economy isn't that strong. But even though it's not that strong, they're willing to risk confrontation over this issue. And then, of course, everybody knows about Iran that's been preparing and preparing and preparing for what they think is an inevitable Israeli assault on them from the air, from the sea, with missiles. So we're really on the edge of the abyss now. People need to wake up. Americans need to put down the beer, get up off the couch, and pay attention to what's happening, because they could wake up to regional wars that combined begin to look awfully global.
I've been really worried about the sort of wag the dog, as we head into this election. And I know it almost sounds like a conspiracy theory at this point, but that we would try to rally the American people around a common enemy, whether it's through a false flag or some other strategy. This combination over the past 24 hours of this U.S. and UK propaganda telling us that Iran and Russia teaming up to bring us, to create a force of nuclear weapons. So I keep looking for these signs of the wag the dog moment, and every morning I'm sort of surprised by the new headlines, and I see today the UK and US warning about an alliance to build Iranian nuclear weapons and with Russia, and now we need to fear that. What's the truth here?
You say wag the dog, and I think it's interesting that if you listen to Zelensky and Netanyahu, they both have a similar objective. Both of them want desperately to drag the United States into war on their behalf. That's quite clear. So we're already the dog being wagged at this point. The question is, are we going to be wagged and dragged right over the finish line, which means open war with Russia, Iran, and potentially China, and who knows who else in the Middle East? I mean, the entire region is up in arms right now against Israel. That's another question. Now, to get back real quick to something else you mentioned, this missile the Houthis launched, remember, it flew 1,300 miles in, we estimate, about 12 minutes.
A hypersonic, yes.
That sounds hypersonic to me. That may have flown at, say, 4,500 or 4,900 miles per hour. anything over 4,500 miles per hour is hypersonic. And it can go all the way up to 7,600 miles per hour, which we don't see very often. So most of it is Mach 5, Mach 6. It's not going to get to Mach 7. But the point is, it seems like it was probably hypersonic. And if they say it wasn't, then the question is, why didn't Israeli air defense elements not shoot it down? Because if it's slower than hypersonic, then you can target it and you can shoot it out of the sky. But it didn't happen. So, I don't know what to believe, except we know the Houthis flew this thing 1,300 miles in 12 minutes and landed it right in the middle of Tel Aviv. If I were an Israeli, I would take that quite seriously, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And yeah, the question is, why wasn't it shot down if it could have been shot down? And if they couldn't shoot it down because it's hypersonic, then that speaks to the power of these weapons that they have in their arsenal, and the United States and Israel appear not to have a response to that. No?
No, I think that's right. I don't think we can defend against hypersonic missiles. The United States cannot, neither can the Israelis. Now, we have the capability to build and launch hypersonic missiles. All of your intercontinental ballistic missiles, by the way, are hypersonic, which is why nobody can shoot them down. That's why if you escalate to the strategic level with nuclear weapons, you might as well bid farewell to everybody you know, because you're going to be destroyed. No one can shoot it down. No one can stop it. There is no defense against it. I think this is an interesting point that we've reached if you stop and consider it. We've been on a long journey to a very dangerous destination. The destination has always been confrontation with Russia and Iran and potentially others now. All we have to do is look at BRICS. And BRICS controls at least 40% of the gold in the world, and they're talking about going to another currency inside BRICS that excludes us that will be based on gold, at least partially, if not completely. All of these things seem to be moving in parallel: economic, political, and military. Everyone is divorcing themselves from the United States and Israel. It's that simple. And we have a few diehards like Starmer over in London, who's at war with his own people, who also wants to go to war with Russia. And he's dangerous because he, like Boris Johnson, his predecessor, could easily drag us into a wider conflict. I don't think there's any question of it. In the meantime, the Germans have said no more aid to Ukraine. So the Germans have opted out. That's very important. So what's NATO doing? Well, everybody always asks that question. NATO, Clayton, is Washington, effectively, right, with some strap hangers, Britain having been the most frequent one, and occasionally the French or the Dutch. But the Germans have always been reluctant partners when it came to external warfare. They're now out of it as far as Ukraine is concerned.
Absolute tinderbox. Colonel, before we let you go, I know you guys are launching a new website, and of course, tell our audience, people want a solution to all of this mess. Where can they turn?
Well, the interesting thing is a new platform owned by One Truth Media called Republic, RE:public, has been launched as of last week. What's unique about it? First of all, the servers are privately owned. That's very important. Secondly, there is no advertisement on the platform. In other words, no big corporate advertising money that could hold Republic hostage to their political will. What does all of this mean? It means that Republic is a free speech platform. Now, anybody can go on Republic. You just Google for it, it'll come up. You can go on and read whatever is being posted there. But if you want to take action, and there are opportunities to take actions, to contact political figures, contact people in your neighborhood, your county, your city, your state about specific issues, to contact organizations across the entire country that share your values, your interests. You can do all of that, but you have to then ultimately pay a fee. That fee is $180 a year unless you can get a discount code. My discount code is published on my own personal website. I've sent it out on tweets. I try to get it out to as many people as possible. because then you only pay $120 a year, which is significant savings. But the nice thing about this platform is it doesn't matter if you're left or right or in the middle. You can be a pacifist. You can be a warmonger. You can post. You can put things there on that platform. You can write articles. You can circulate video, real-time video, immediate, something that happened within the last 10 minutes or whatever you think is appropriate. The only thing you can't do is you can't post pornography, and we're not going to tolerate someone on the platform who is arguing for the destruction of our country. That we won't tolerate. But otherwise, you're on there. You're not going to be canceled. I mean, this morning I received all these notifications from people that said, you know, these tweets, what I guess we call them X's now, that are out there, the people that sent those just 24 hours ago have now been thrown off the platform. They've been censored. They've been canceled for whatever it was that they said. That cannot happen on this platform. So they've got their own servers. They're not hostage to someone else's servers. They're not taking money from anyone. This is going to be self-funding, which is why you have a fee. Now, if you're a small business of less than 500 employees, you're a small farmer, you may have 1,000 acres, but you have less than 500 employees, you can get on there and you can advertise to your heart's content. We want small business to succeed. We're trying to keep out big corporate interests who are trying to shape policy, shape thinking, shape attitudes. We don't want their shaping influence on the platform. So if you believe in free speech, you want free speech, Republic is the place you really need to go.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have it up here on the screen and in the description as well, so people can check it out. Very exciting, and I think obviously free speech is
that you need to get that discount. You might publish that for people.
Okay, we'll make sure it's in the description for
worth the effort to go to the link to save $80 or $60.
Absolutely.
Rather.
Yeah, we'll make sure that people can use that discount code if they want to sign up and become a part of this. Free speech is under attack, and we need platforms like this so people can get the truth about what's happening in their country. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, always great to see you. Thank you so much for your insights and analysis, as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
And thanks so much, Colonel. Really appreciate it. And, we'll have a link in the description so people can check out the website as well, so people can sign up and to go and check out Republic. I think this is exciting because we are under attack. A lot of independent media is under attack from these platforms, these big tech platforms. So to have a free speech platform like that, where we can look into publishing our content and our shows on there as well. We've been talking with my team about that. So we'll have a link down. You can use the Colonel's link and check out Republic. So thanks to all of you guys for subscribing today, and please share this show with your loved ones. Try to get the message out about what's happening in this world. I think the Colonel is right. We need to wake up. People need to wake up. People are kind of going through their days like drones right now. When all of these things are happening around us, we need to marshal ourselves and team up on this. So guys, thank you guys so much for subscribing to the show. Thank you for being here on this Monday. And we know it's been a crazy news cycle the past couple of days with everything that happened over the weekend. But we'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you for making us a part of your afternoon. Much love to all of you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.